There are moments when you feel as if everything is falling apart, as if life itself has become an undecipherable riddle. You try to control, to plan, to resist, but something keeps slipping away, like water between your fingers. Perhaps deep down, there is a quiet sense that it is not you who is steering life, but that something greater is steering you. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And this is precisely where the mystery begins. What if life were not what happens to you, but what happens through you? What if every crisis, every loss, every unlikely coincidence were the movement of consciousness itself, trying to awaken within its human form? The truth Jung discovered, and that many avoid facing, is simple, and at the same time, terrifying. You are not the author of life. You are the medium through which life writes itself. For decades, Jung observed that all human experiences, from pain to illumination, obey a single intention: to make the unconscious conscious. Nothing is random. Nothing is wasted. Every difficult relationship, every symptom, every repressed emotion is the voice of wholeness calling for your attention. Life is not trying to punish you, but to reveal you, and perhaps that is why you are here now. Because something within you senses that there is an order behind the chaos, a silent purpose guiding the apparent accident. Today we will walk together through this discovery. You are not about to understand life. You are about to realize that life itself is understanding itself through you. Chapter 1. The Machine of Consciousness. Everything that happens to you wants to awaken you. Life, beneath all its forms, is a psychological process, an invisible movement that transforms the unconscious into consciousness, slowly, through the experiences you call chance. Jung saw this in every one of his patients. Nothing that happened to them was random. Every event, every person, every obstacle carried a message from the unconscious trying to become visible. Think for a moment. How many times has something that seemed like a mistake later revealed a hidden meaning? A relationship that collapsed, an unexpected dismissal, a pain you thought unbearable, all of it, in some way, reorganized your being toward something truer. Jung called this mysterious intelligence the self, the center and totality of the psyche, guiding the ego toward wholeness, even when the ego resists. Life, then, is not a theater of accidents, but a machine of consciousness. Everything that happens serves awakening, even what you fear the most. The difficult childhood, the traumas that seem to push you away from the light, the exhausting repetitions, they are all gears in this sacred mechanism. The soul uses the imperfections of existence to polish the inner diamond of perception. But the ego, blinded by control, resists. It wants comfort, it wants stability, it wants answers. And it is precisely this attachment to control that causes suffering, because the purpose of life is not to give you safety, it is to give you awareness. And awareness rarely arises from what is predictable. Every time you are challenged, something unconscious within you is trying to emerge. The person who irritates you, for example, is mirroring a denied part of your own being. The fear that paralyzes you may be a call to courage. Anxiety may be the soul whispering that the path you chose is not the one the self wants to follow. Nothing is an enemy. Everything is language. Jung said, symptoms are nature's attempts at healing. That is why, when life seems to disorganize you, it is reorganizing you for something greater. Chaos is the method of consciousness. Close your eyes for a moment. Ask yourself, what is life trying to show me right now? Breathe deeply and observe. Perhaps a memory comes, a feeling, a single word. That is the unconscious opening a crack for the light. And if you want to draw even closer to this dialogue, try writing, without censorship, what within me wants to be seen. Do not look for ready-made answers, only presence. Because what we call life is, in truth, consciousness trying to see itself through us, and every event is a delicate attempt of the self to recognize itself. Chapter 2. Ego versus self, the tension that creates you. Within each of us lives an ancient tension, a silent dialogue that shapes our entire existence. On one side, the ego, the I, that thinks, desires and wants control over destiny. On the other, the self, the invisible center of the psyche, the nucleus of the soul that knows the deeper purpose behind every event. And life at its core is the field where these two meet, clash, and, over time, learn to dance together. The ego wants safety. The self wants expansion. The ego wants predictability. The self wants truth. The ego wants to remain. The self wants to evolve. And it is from this sacred opposition that the movement of consciousness is born. Without tension, there is no growth. Without conflict, there is no awakening. Jung understood that human suffering is not punishment, but the consequence of this clash. When the ego tries to maintain control over a life the self wants to transform, pain becomes inevitable. That relationship that ends when you least expect, the job that collapses, the exhaustion of pretending everything is fine, all of it is life removing what no longer serves your expansion. Imagine the ego as a house built on the edge of the ocean. It believes it owns the landscape until a wave comes and floods everything. What appears to be destruction is, in truth, the sea, the self, reminding the ego that it belongs to something much greater. The wave does not come to punish, but to purify. This is what Jung lived in his own journey. The respected psychiatrist, a man of science, was seized by visions, dreams, and dialogues with figures from the unconscious. His ego feared madness, but the self was calling him into the collective soul. By accepting the invitation, he discovered that the tension between reason and mystery was itself the bridge of consciousness. The same happens within us. Every time something goes wrong, it is the self correcting the course. Every time you lose something you thought essential, it is the self removing the excess to reveal what is truly essential. The pain the ego feels is the birth of clarity. The task, therefore, is not to eliminate the ego. It is to integrate it, to make it the lucid servant of the self, not its tyrant, to allow it to act, to plan, to decide, but never forgetting that there is a greater intelligence guiding the storyline. When the ego learns to listen to the self, life ceases to be a war and becomes cooperation with the mystery. Close your eyes for a moment and ask, in what part of my life am I fighting against what the self wants me to live? The answer may come as a shiver, a silence, a tear, and right there, in that instant of surrender, something within you awakens. Because life, that force the ego tries to dominate, is in truth consciousness itself trying to be born through you. Chapter 3. Life as Story, the personal myth you live without noticing. Every human being lives inside a story, even if they don't realize it. From childhood, we begin to build narratives about who we are, what we deserve, and what the world is. These stories become so familiar that we no longer see them as stories, but as reality. Jung called this the personal myth, the invisible plot the unconscious writes and the ego interprets as destiny. Have you ever asked yourself why certain patterns repeat in your life? Why the same pains return in new settings with different faces? It is because the myth continues to be told. The storyline changes, but the theme remains the same. Abandonment, rejection, control, salvation, the fear of not being enough. Each of us enacts an archetypal drama, a symbolic journey in which the soul seeks to recognize itself. Some live the myth of the victim, believing everything happens against them. Others, the myth of the hero, who must conquer the impossible to prove their worth. Some live the myth of the martyr, sacrificing themselves to earn love. And there is also the myth of the seeker, eternally searching for what already lives within. These narratives are not weaknesses. They are ancient maps, scripts the unconscious uses to organize the soul's experience. But there comes a moment when the unconscious myth becomes a prison. You begin to realize that the story you tell about yourself no longer serves who you have become. It is in this moment that consciousness awakens and the myth begins to be rewritten. Life then changes tone, not because the world transforms, but because the narrator within you does. Suffering ceases to be punishment and becomes symbol. Chaos, once frightening, reveals structure. Destiny, once blind, shows itself as dialogue. Jung said, "What is not made conscious manifests as fate." Translated, the myth you ignore lives for you. But the myth you recognize, you co-author. The difference between being lived and living consciously lies in the degree of awareness of the story that inhabits you. Try observing your own plot. What is the secret phrase that has defined your life until now? Perhaps something like, "I need to be strong. No one understands me. I have to save others." Or, "One day I will be recognized." Write that phrase. Look at it with tenderness. It was necessary until now, but it doesn't have to be eternal. Then ask yourself, what would life be like if I told a new story? A story where you are neither victim nor savior, but conscious presence within your own myth. A story where the hero rests and the being simply is. Because freedom, as Jung discovered, does not lie in escaping the myth. It lies in living the myth consciously. Chapter 4. Individuation, including what was excluded. The soul does not want you to become better. It wants you to become whole. And that is why the path of individuation is not a staircase ascending upward, but a circle that leads you back inward to the point where everything began. To the place where you were already complete before you believed you needed to split yourself apart. When we are born, we are whole, yet unconscious of this wholeness. Life then teaches us to choose a side, the acceptable over the unacceptable, the visible over the hidden, what pleases over what frightens. Thus, the ego is born, and with it, the shadow. Everything the ego rejects, the unconscious gathers: anger, vulnerability, desire, fear, tenderness. Every denied fragment becomes an echo in the inner darkness, waiting for the moment it will be seen again. Individuation is the process of bringing these fragments back into the light, not to glorify them, but to integrate them with awareness. It is to understand that what frightens you within yourself is often what will complete you. Jung said, "The shadow is 90% pure gold." For within what you fear lives the creative power the ego could not contain. But the ego resists. It wants to remain light, good, spiritual. It forgets that light without shadow is only blindness. And so, life creates situations that force you to meet what you had denied. A relationship that awakens repressed jealousy, a failure that reveals pride disguised as humility, a grief that uncovers the love you had hidden behind control. Nothing is punishment. Everything is mirror. To individuate is to allow wholeness to manifest, to accept chaos without trying to fix it, to allow the opposite without losing yourself in it. It is not to eliminate the ego, but to teach it to cooperate with the self. It is not to destroy the masks, but to learn to see through them. It is not to conquer the shadow, but to walk beside it with respect. At this point in the journey, something changes profoundly. You stop wanting to be perfect and begin to desire to be true. And to be true is to include what the ego excluded. To love the human that bleeds, the contradictory that feels, the imperfect that seeks. Now close your eyes for a moment and bring to mind a part of yourself you usually avoid. Do not try to change it. Simply say, in silence, "I see you," and even without fully understanding you, I include you. This simple gesture is the beginning of integration. And if you wish, share in the comments a short sentence about what within you is asking for inclusion. For when one person allows integration, they inspire many others to do the same. To individuate is to stop fighting against your own nature. It is to realize that every shadow, every loss, and every mistake were only the self trying to return you to wholeness. Chapter 5. Signs, Dreams, and Synchronicity, the Language of the Self. Life speaks, but it rarely uses words. It whispers in symbols, in coincidences, in dreams, in repetitions that persist until they are understood. The self, this deep intelligence guiding the process of consciousness, does not communicate through logic, but through the secret language of the invisible. When the ego closes itself off, the self begins to speak by other means. Sometimes it is a recurring dream that leaves you restless. Other times, it is an improbable encounter that seems to carry a meaning impossible to ignore. These are the signs of the soul, the ways in which the unconscious tries to open a dialogue with the awakened part of you. Jung called synchronicity the experience in which the outer world reflects an inner state. When a song plays at the exact moment you were thinking of someone, when you read an old phrase and feel it was written for your now, when a coincidence dissolves the boundary between inside and outside, and for an instant you perceive the universe is alive, conscious, participating in your story. It is not magic nor chance. It is the psyche revealing itself as part of reality, not separate from it. Dreams are another language of the self. In them, consciousness sleeps and the unconscious takes the lead. What seems absurd is, in truth, symbolic code. The house represents the psychic body, water, the deep emotions, the child, the new birth of the self within you. Jung studied thousands of dreams and saw a pattern. Every dream attempts to correct the imbalance of consciousness. If you live too much in reason, you will dream of chaos. If you live lost in chaos, you will dream of structure. The unconscious seeks balance, and the dream is its way of restoring harmony. But the modern ego has lost the art of listening. Haste, noise, constant distraction interrupt the dialogue. And so life raises the volume through symptoms, crises, symbolic accidents. Not as punishment, but as the last attempt at communication. Learn to listen again. Write down your dreams upon waking before the ego translates them. Observe subtle repetitions, words, images, numbers, people who reappear in cycles. Ask yourself, what does this experience want to show me about myself? And then, listen to the silence, for it is in silence that the self speaks with greatest clarity. There is an intelligence behind every coincidence. There is an intention behind every apparent accident. And when you begin to listen, everything deepens. The everyday becomes oracle, and destiny becomes dialogue. Synchronicity is not the universe conspiring in your favor. It is the universe recognizing itself in you. Because when the self wants to manifest, reality itself bends into symbol. And every coincidence is a reminder. You are not living life. Life is trying to remember who it is through you. Chapter 6. Spirit in Human Form, Consciousness, Experiencing Itself as You. There is a silent, almost imperceptible instant when consciousness becomes aware of itself. There is no thought, no effort, only the pure presence of being alive. It is in this instant that truth reveals itself. You are not someone living life. You are life itself, experiencing itself as you. Jung reached this understanding not through philosophy, but through direct experience. During his years of immersion in the unconscious, the visions, the dialogues, the images of the Red Book, he realized he was not Carl Jung having soul experiences. It was the soul, the universal psyche itself, having the experience of being Carl Jung. And this revelation changes everything. What you call I is the form the infinite takes to know itself. Your story, with all its pains, failures, and discoveries, is the unique way consciousness experiences being human. Nothing in you is accidental. Fear, love, mistake, courage, they are the instruments with which spirit plays the music of life through your body. Think about it. How could consciousness experience love if there were no separation? How could it know courage if there were no fear? How could it grasp transcendence if there were no limitation? Finitude is not punishment. It is the stage where the infinite recognizes itself. The ego believes it is the protagonist of this theater, but the ego is only the character through which the whole expresses itself. And the self, the invisible center of the psyche, is the presence that watches, directs, and interprets the drama simultaneously. You are both actor and audience, the dream and the dreamer, and life is the stage where spirit plays at being human to remember itself. When you realize this, something dissolves within you. The rigidity of expectations, the guilt of not living right, the fear of failure, because there is no way to fail at being what the universe itself chose to be. Every breath is a hidden prayer, every encounter a divine mirror reflecting the same consciousness in countless forms. True awakening is not about becoming more spiritual, but about being present in the simple fact of existing, drinking a cup of coffee, feeling the wind, watching a tear fall. All of it is the infinite recognizing itself in form. Consciousness is not outside of you in some subtle plane. It is what is observing you now through your own eyes. And when the ego for an instant surrenders, life becomes sacred. Not because something mystical happens, but because you remember that the mystical was always what you are. You are consciousness, remembering its own name, spirit in human form, eternity playing as time. And the simple fact of existing is already the miracle life wanted to live. Conclusion: you are the path, life recognizing itself. In the end, everything Jung discovered can be spoken in a whisper. You do not live life, life lives you. And every experience, every encounter, every tear is existence itself, trying to become conscious of itself. Nothing was in vain. The childhood that marked you, the loves that left, the times you felt lost, all of it was part of the same secret movement. Consciousness, remembering who it is. Pain was never the end. It was only the call back to the center, and the center is you, not the you of the ego, but the you that watches time pass and remains whole in silence. To individuate is not to reach a spiritual ideal. It is to understand that heaven and earth, error and truth, shadow and light, all belong. You did not come here to conquer life, but to be the place where it awakens. So, breathe. Feel the miracle of being conscious in this very moment. The mind may not understand, but the heart knows. Life is recognizing itself through what you call I. And when this perception takes root, the world ceases to be a threat. Chaos becomes a teacher, and every moment, even the simplest, becomes sacred. Now I invite you, with serenity, to share in the comments. In what part of your life do you sense that consciousness is trying to wake you up? Your sharing may be the mirror that awakens another soul. Like this video, subscribe, and share this space with those who are also seeking meaning, because awakening is individual, but the path is collective, and life is only just beginning to remember itself through us.